Jimmy Carter has passed, meaning the last guinea worm in existence has also most likely passed. We're going to talk about the Carter legacy, my thoughts on Carter, both during and after his presidency, and what the nation is doing with this. In other news, January 6th has come and gone, with no major riots, with no major storming of the Capitol. But a lot of people are left with a sour taste in their mouth over the fact that Harris actually went back and certified the election. We'll talk about the certification, some of the complaints that are going on that, and where we go with this. A pair of terrorist attacks on opposite ends of the country, both in Vegas and New Orleans, take place on New Year's Day, involving vehicles rented from the same company and people who were stationed at the same Air Force base. We'll go over what's happening there. I'm sorry, Army base, not Air Force base. We'll go over what's happening with that, where we go with that, and what happens there. And the MAGA movement is praising Cannon for blocking the release of the Jack Smith report. We'll go over what's happening with that, where that goes, because that is a completely different story, and I've got some thoughts on that one too. It is going to be all of this, and given the fact that we've been gone for 2 weeks, much more over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, find some friends, grab some food, and we will see you on the flip side of the title card. And I must confess, I still believe when I'm not with you, I lose my mind. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Totally wanted to use a different line for that song. My eyes caught a certain line, and I just started reading. It was where they caught, it's where they glanced, and I did. I completely wanted to use a different line for that, because I thought it would have been greater. It would have been better to say, show me how you want it to be, tell me baby, because I need to know now, because I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. But my eyes caught the next line after that, and that's just where it started. I didn't realize it until I was halfway through the quote, too, so botched it. That's what I get for taking 2 weeks off. Good evening. Hello. Hi, live viewers. And whether it be morning, afternoon, or night for those of you listening back on the audio platform, good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a lot to go over here today. It has been intense. Like a camping trip. I will tell you that right off the bat. And, I mean, we're all over the place on some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I cut. Some of the stuff I did not go over. I chose not to have on the stack because it was so unbelievably, unfathomably fucking stupid. And I think some of it was even AstroTurf. The H-1B visa thing, not on the stack. I watched that whole thing unfold, and the only thing that I could think of is, man, this seems like the left wing trying to pit MAGA against each other so that they come back into this infighting against themselves. I don't want to have any fucking part in that. That's stupid. That is a dumb thing. I do not want to do that. So, that got axed off the platform. Some of the things with Mike Johnson got axed off the platform. I do have the speakership race on here, but just some of the controversy that came off of here, I thought it was stupid. We will talk about Jimmy Carter. We're going to talk about the Palisades fire as well because, well, some of you might still know somebody in California who needed to be evacuated from that. So I always do want to make sure that we talk about this, talk about the certification, the stupidity that goes around this. Biden is trying to break as much shit as he can on his way out the door. Who could have seen that coming? So we're going to talk about that and what happens with there. It's been a mess for the last couple weeks. It has been quieter, by the way, than I thought it was going to be. Because I thought we were just going to be one thing after another. This is insanity. And I thought we were going to have like 120 tabs just open as stuff. Honestly, I probably have almost as much on stuff I like and stuff that I hate as I do on the main channels right now. No, I don't have quite that much, but I got a fair amount over there. Now, before we get started, there is one thing that I want to talk about. I want to put my cards on the table and just kind of lay it all out here for you guys. And this has to do with an argument that we're going to talk more about and things I like and things that I hate. But I want to open up with this one here. It goes along with a promise that I made when I made the video that I put out the day that I voted for Trump. Kicking and screaming, of course. This is not going to become a mega super fan YouTube channel. My X account is not going to become a mega super fan X account. These are things that are not going to happen. I am insanely skeptical of Donald Trump. I saw the way that he spent not spended. Wow, I sound like one of the mouth-breathing fucking Democrats by doing that. I saw the way that he spent in his last term. I have inhibitions about the fact that he got a second term at all right now. That bothers me. I have inhibitions about the fact that I had to vote for him. And if he is going to continue to spend the way that he did in the last 2 years of term one, or if he is going to use the lawfare against his enemies, as he has hinted that he would like to do, if he wants to go and start a war somewhere because he can and maybe he can profit off of it. If he wants to expand and go beyond his constitutional mandate in any form, this will be one of the first channels to call his orange ass out on it. I didn't go and vote against the corrupted prosecutor to see another corrupted government official. And yes, I will be the first one. And this, of course, is going on the new paid shilling coming from DC Drano. When we get down to that point on things I like and things that I hate, I will explain why he's doing it because I figured it out. Anybody with more than 2 ounces of gray matter between their ears should fairly easily be able to figure it out right now. It is coming from the Trump campaign. It's not organic. It's not grassroots. But there's a reason that they're doing it the way that they're doing it the way they are. It's not going to work either, by the way. It's going to possibly push for a Dem victory in 2026 and into 2028. So, a lot of stuff that I want to talk about when we get down to that part. But no, this will never become a Trump or MAGA superfan YouTube channel, Rumble channel, Twitch channel, or X account. Ever. Not going to do it. I'm skeptical of all politicians. That is not going to change because I might get some mild tax relief and the markets are going to fare better for jobs in the next couple years. With that out of the way, let's talk about what is going on in our country as we speak right now. So before we get started, do make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, Overruled with Katie Zed. Go check all of that out. I am hoping very, very deeply and distinctly to go down and visit my friends in Georgia this summer again. That is the goal. That's what we're going to try to do because, well, I miss them. I didn't get to go see them last year because, well, my job got switched and I literally had no vacation because a month before I had technically started a new job. we're not doing that again this time. So yeah, I'm hoping to get that taken care of. I want to go back and see that. It's going to be, I hope, an awesome time. There's going to be some new introductions going out for that. But go check those out. Those people out there, great. Steven texted me on Christmas. I was very, very grateful for that. I liked that. I got to do a little bit of humble brag. I like that too. So we've got that going on for us as well. And with that, let's get down into the news. I might stop and clear my throat a little bit more than normal, by the way. I can feel a little bit of the sick on the back of the throat again. I noticed it while I was talking on the phone on the drive back here, so hopefully there won't be a drive back here for too much longer. We'll see what happens next week. Next week is a little bit up in the air right now. Sounds like it's all going to go through. Fingers crossed. Now the news. We're going to start with Mr. Carter. As we usually do, we're going to start with the person who just passed away, who had some celebrity in the topics that we're discussing here. So we start today from the New York Times, a former newspaper. Jimmy Carter, peacemaking president. Huh, look at that, the first lie right in the headline. Amid crises is dead at 100 years old. From Peter Baker and Roy Reed. Jimmy Carter, who rose from Georgia farmland to become the 39th president of the U.S. on a promise of national healing after the wounds of Watergate and Vietnam, then lost the White House in a cauldron of economic turmoil at home and crisis in Iran, died on Sunday at his home in Plains, Georgia. He was 100 years old. The Carter Center in Atlanta announced his death, which came nearly 3 months after Mr. Carter, already the longest living president in American history, became the first former president-in-chief to reach the century mark. Mr. Carter went into hospice 22 months ago, so he held on for 2 years. 2 years he stayed in hospice. Even longer than his family expected, tributes poured in from presidents, world leaders, and many everyday people from around the world, who admired not only Mr. Carter's service during 4 years in the White House, but his 4 decades of efforts since leaving office to fight disease, broker peace, and provide for the poor. Biden ordered the state funeral to be held and was expected to deliver a eulogy. Don't do that, Joe. At least, if you're going to do it, do your real voice. Don't do the act that you do to make people think that you're a dumb shit. I still think that's an act, by the way. I don't think that he actually is as Alzheimer's ridden as they said that he was. To all of the young people in this nation, for anyone in search of what it means to live a life of purpose and meaning, the good life, study Jimmy Carter. A man of principle, faith, and humility, Mr. Biden, the first Democratic senator to endorse Mr. Carter's long-shot 76 bid for the presidency, said in a statement. He showed that we are a great nation because we are good people. Trump, who often denigrated Carter in recent days, spoke of unraveling one of his signature accomplishments, the transfer of the Panama Canal to Panama, which we do need to unravel that one. I stand with Trump on that one. Not by military force, but with a promise that we can protect the shipping lanes and maybe even expand them. I do support the idea of the U.S. taking the Panama Canal back. Diplomatically. Issued a gracious statement. The challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we owe him a debt of gratitude. Mr. Carter was no fan of Mr. Trump and family members. I think a lot of that was AstroTurf, by the way. Said he was holding on in part to vote for Harris. The former president cast his absentee ballot for her in mid-October after making his final public appearance on his birthday when he was rolled out to his yard in a wheelchair to watch a flyover of military jets in his honor. Other than interludes in the White House and the Georgia governor's mansion, he and his wife, the former First Lady Rosalind Carter, lived in the same simple home in Plains for most of their adult lives, and each of them passed away there. Mrs. Carter in November of last year. A lifelong farmer who still worked with his hands building houses for the poor, well into his 90s, Mr. Carter long defied death and outlived not only his wife, but his vice president, most of his cabinet, key aides, and his allies, as well as the Republican president he defeated and the challenger who later defeated him. Over the years, he beat back a series of health crises, including a bout with skin cancer melanoma, which spread to his liver and brain, and repeated falls, one of them giving him a broken hip. The Carter Center announced in February last year that Mr. Carter, after a series of short hospital stays, decided to forego further life-prolonging medical treatment and receive hospice care at home. And continue to live, by the way. That guy was, for all intents and purposes, tough as nails. Let's talk about Jimmy Carter. The elephant in the room. This is not going to be a Jimmy Carter love fest. I'm going to put it right out there. I knew nothing about Carter except for various little passages in Mad Magazine because my next door neighbors, who were in their 80s at the time, and this was me in the 90s, collected Mad Magazines from all the way back into the 60s up until what would have been at the modern era. I knew a little bit about him from passing for that, and a little bit of hearing my parents talk about the exchange over from him to Reagan, my parents graduating under the Carter administration. But I didn't really know anything about him until I watched King of the Hill and saw that he had that one episode. It was a Christmas episode where Hank and Cotton were fighting in full dispute. Under community service, Cotton was ordered to go do Habitat for Humanity, and Hank went out to help, of course. And Carter was there and used his diplomatic skills to broker a peace between Hank and Cotton, which is too bad he couldn't do with Iran. Let's not go with the editorialization just yet. I'm just explaining what I know about Carter and what I've known about that. Now, looking back, and this is where the editorialization comes in. Now, actually looking back and seeing what he did during his presidency, the economy that he oversaw, which was in the tank, the gas lines, part of which coming from the tail end of the Ford administration, but Carter himself exacerbating the problems with that. The Iran deal that went awry. A lot of people say that it was the Reagan administration, the campaign rather, that caused that. I don't necessarily buy that. Carter was a sucky president. He sucked. Under most normal circumstances, a presidency like Carter's would almost leave you impossible to see another Democrat elected in your lifetime. And I mean, it did go a while because you got 2 terms of Reagan after that, and then 1 term of H.W. God help us all. But with that being said, Carter's post-presidency was one of the most amazing post-presidencies I've ever seen in my life. He, until basically being pressured to, at the last moment this last year, being pressured to tell the world how much he hated Donald Trump, because that's a position that you have to hold in this world. Prior to that, Carter had stayed out of politics after his presidency. He built homes for Habitat for Humanity. And he built them with his hands. He didn't just go out and contract a bunch of people to do so. Use his money to go broker people to go out and do that. He went out there with a nail gun and put drywall up. Jimmy Carter, for all the faults that he had as a president, and there were many, like a lot. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, actually, how many faults there were. For all the faults that he had in his presidency, he had one of the most amazing post-presidencies out there, giving loads more to charity than I think I've ever seen most Democrats give. I don't, again, want to make this into a partisan battle off of this, but there's the expectation that by government force from the Democrat Party, charity comes through the government with a little bit off the top, and then goes out to the people who need charity, even though that's not in any way how any of that works. He did amazing work with parasites, and over in Africa, he was great in the fight against the guinea worm. I know I give him a lot of shit for that, but I mean, that was probably one of the most pervasive parasites in the third world for a long time. And last year, we had one of the first years ever where there were 0 cases. He fought that particular parasitic infection tooth and nail, to the point that it's appropriate to make the joke that he will live forever as long as you keep one little guinea worm in a jar. He'll live until all of them are eradicated, and if you keep one in a jar, he'll never die. I made that joke when they were running Democratic primaries and saying that he should go back and run because he's probably more mentally cognizant and fit than Biden was. But no, I cannot say a bad word about Jimmy Carter from 1981 on until present day. He's a great man. He did a lot of really good things. I remember when Bobby Hill thought he was Jesus because his overalls said JC on them, and he brokered the peace between Hank and Cotton. So he has passed. Shitty president, great post-presidency. As for his funeral, from NBC News, former President Jimmy Carter lies in state at the U.S. Capitol after eulogies by Kamala Harris and Republican leaders. From Rebecca Shabbat, Neil O'Brien, and Zoe Richards. Former President Carter arrived at the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday to lie in state after a memorial service attended by his family, Harris, and members of Congress and other officials. Congressional leaders eulogized the 39th president, praising his work in office, faith, and volunteerism. Jimmy Carter was that all-too-rare example of a gifted man who also walks with humility, modesty, and grace, said Harris, who recalled that she was in middle school when Carter was elected president. That's not right. Harris is only a couple years younger than my mom. It might have been very, very late middle school, but I think that she would have been in high school for that. He lived his faith, he served the people, he left the world better than he found it, she said. Senate Majority Leader John Thune highlighted Carter's spirit of volunteerism, building homes on behalf of the nonprofit group Habitat for Humanity, including a 1994 project in Thune's home state of South Dakota. He was there to get down in the weeds and the dirt, and he did that, literally on numerous Habitat builds, Thune said. House Speaker Johnson praised the enduring legacy that he leaves, not only upon this nation, but upon the world. Carter's casket arrived on the Capitol in a horse-drawn caisson at around 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with the cannons fired upon its arrival. That would have been cool to witness. And family members gathered at the top of the Capitol steps. Honorary pallbearers carried the late president into the rotunda, where his casket was laid on the Lincoln catafalque, a platform built to support President Abraham Lincoln's casket and now used for such ceremonies. I could make a comment about the similarities between Carter's time in office and Lincoln's atrocities in office, but I'm going to leave that one lie. It will be open to the public viewing from about 7 p.m. to midnight. The statues of Lincoln and other presidents, including Washington, Jefferson, Truman, and Ford, who Carter defeated in '76, line the rotunda. His body will lie in state through Thursday morning, when there will be a service for him at Washington at National Cathedral. Tuesday's events began in the morning, with the transport of Carter's remains from his presidential library in Atlanta to Joint Base Andrews near Washington. From there, Carter and his family traveled by motorcade to the U.S. Navy Memorial on Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Capitol. At the Navy Memorial, which Carter authorized in '80 after it was approved by Congress, the former president remains were transferred from hearse to horse-drawn caisson for the funeral procession at the Capitol. The procession is designed to mirror Carter's inaugural parade in January 20th, 1977, when instead of riding in the presidential limo, he and his family walked from the Capitol to the White House, the military release said. The White House Historical Association noted this was the first time a president walked the pavement of Pennsylvania Avenue after the inauguration ceremony, demonstrating Carter's desire to make the presidency accessible to all citizens. So, if you are at all interested in seeing him lie in state, get your tickets to D.C. It's probably a little bit rowdy right now, but probably a little bit expensive as well. Long says, I'm totally with you on the guinea worm eradication work. The eradication of that parasite was truly a momentous contribution he made to all mankind. Do you know how much about the guinea worm and how typical guinea worm infection progresses? It's unimaginably gruesome. It is. After Styx actually started making the joke, I looked it up because I had no idea what a guinea worm was. And yes, it is in fact very gruesome. Very effective evolutionarily, I will say. I know that Bong doesn't believe in evolution, but from an evolutionary standpoint, yes, it is incredibly effective on how they transmit themselves. North Star. By promoting peace and justice, Carter elevated the role of ex-president from Ledger King. Carter could have been tossed off as little more than a failed one-term president who presided over rapid inflation, gas shortage, and the Iran hostage crisis. Instead, he turned the more than 4 decades after leaving the White House into a mission to save the planet. By the way, everything that Ledger said in the first paragraph is true. Carter, if it hadn't been for all of his charity work, would have been considered a failure throughout the rest of his life. Our friends in the media and the DNC can rewrite history all they want. Carter failed. Into a mission to save the planet, monitoring foreign elections, eradicating diseases in Africa, addressing homelessness in America, and in the process redefined both how Americans viewed him and how the nation measured its ex-president. Carter died last month in his hometown of Plain, Georgia, at the age of 92. That is not correct. He died at the age of 100. For Carter, a man of deep faith and humility, there was really no other path but to continue the humanitarian work he laid out as president, said Douglas Brinkley, author of The Unfinished Presidency, Carter's journey to the Nobel Peace Prize. He raised the bar on what the next president could do so high that it's going to be hard for anyone to reach because he did it without joining boards of trustees of corporations or in any way seeming to monetize the presidency. Brinkley said the Carter Standard is a North Star for future ex-presidents that are willing to can aim for. I thought the papacy forbade the belief in evolution. Several other presidents kept serving the nation in a variety of pivotal roles after they left the White House. Adams, the 6th president, was elected to Congress after his term and became a forceful voice in the anti-slavery movement. Roosevelt, Theodore, not Franklin, the 26th, made his mark by creating the Bull Moose Party, which promoted progressive policies. Taft, the 27th, served on the U.S. Supreme Court for nearly a decade after he served his 4 years as Commander-in-Chief. But Carter, a peanut farmer who later became governor, has 2 traits that set him apart from many of his forebears. His vigor — he was both the oldest ex-president ever and lived the longest since leaving the White House, in an unrelenting drive to improve the world around him, historians said. Before God, we're all the same, Carter said in a 2020 interview, and we should treat everyone equally and try to help those who are in need. Which, and again, the libertarian in me really appreciates and agrees with, because he had every opportunity to use the levers of government to do that after his presidency, be a lobbyist and try to force taxpayer money into these causes. But he didn't do that. No, he stood up and said, I'll do that myself. Step aside, whippersnappers. So, yes, I do have some appreciation of Carter. Excuse me. If you are in BC for this, what will be closed on Thursday due to Carter's funeral? Briefly. Following Carter's death on December 29th, Biden declared a national day of mourning in honor of the humanitarian leader January 9th, the day of Carter's funeral in Washington, D.C. That is in 2 days, by the way. The tradition, which began as a one-day government shutdown following Lincoln's assassination at 65, is one of many ways the U.S. honors its late presidents. Biden's statements also declared all American flags displayed at public and military sites globally be flown at half-staff for 30 days following Carter's death. Though a national day of mourning isn't recognized as an official federal holiday, meaning many of the businesses typically affected by national celebrations won't be closed, some organizations will be affected by the day of observance. Will banks be open? Yes. Will the stock market be open? In a statement released December 30th, New York Stock Exchange Group President Elaine Martin announced that all markets will be closed on January 9th. So, no stocks. Schools, similar to most banks around the country, most public schools will remain open Thursday because it's not an official federal holiday. However, in accordance with National Day of Mourning protocol, all organizations affiliated with the U.S. Department of Defense education activity, including military schools, will be closed. So, that's what you need to know about for that. Plan accordingly, please. And finally, before we move on to other things, Trump's praise of Carter in death after jeering him in life deepens a contradictory relationship. From Will Weisert and Michelle L. Price over at the Associated Press. Living to 100 let Carter fulfill his wish to vote for Harris against Trump in November. His death means flags at the White House will be at half-staff when Trump regains the presidency on January 20th. Starkly different in their political beliefs and personal lives, their actions as president and after leaving office, Carter and Trump will again be intertwined as the memory and legacy of one linger while the other is inaugurated the second time. It'll be another example of how the two have continued to overlap in often contradictory ways, even though their terms were separated by nearly 40 years. Trump singled out Carter for intense criticism during the 2024 campaign, repeatedly mocking him to fire up supporters. He called Biden the worst, but said he made Carter look brilliant by comparison. He even delivered the line on Carter's 100th birthday in October. The president-elect also promised to use his second term to undo some of Carter's signature accomplishments. He wants to roll back environmental protections, potentially renege on a 77 treaty ceding control of the Panama Canal back to its home country, and dismantle the Federal Department of Education that Carter helped create in '79. All three things that I support, by the way. As long as the middle one is not done by military, only by diplomacy. Speaking of reporters at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach on Tuesday, Trump again bristled at Carter's role in transferring control of the canal to Panama, saying, "It's a disgrace what took place, and Carter gave it to them for $1. He added the idea of Panama running the canal. "They laugh at us because they think we're stupid. Well, we're not stupid anymore." Excuse me. Those comments came on the day Carter's remains were being flown to Washington, where he will lie in state at the Capitol. Pressed on if criticism of Carter was appropriate as that was transpiring, Trump responded, "I liked him as a man. I disagreed with his policies. He thought giving away the Panama Canal was a good thing. I didn't want to bring up the Panama Canal because of Carter's death. He added, even though he had first mentioned it unprompted. Yet Trump is planning to attend Carter's funeral, and his statement marking the former president's passing was gracious. He wrote, "The challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we owe him a debt of gratitude." So, go away. Fuck off, advertisement. And realistically, the criticisms that Trump did fire at Carter were policy-based. They weren't personal. The same thing that I did when I criticized him a couple articles ago. It was all policy-based. It wasn't personal. Carter was a good man. I disagree with a lot of the policy that he put into place in the 70s. I have a deep admiration for him. Again, it's the charity. It's the fact that he did it without government assistance. The most government assistance that he got was being able to elevate his name in a way that he could raise money privately without the government, because he was a former president. Alright, and with that, let's talk about Palisades. From Breaking 911, developing apocalyptic scenes as the Palisades fire rages in the LA area. Let's watch.
Come on, guys! We gotta go! Come on, get in the car! Come on, guys!
That's a little bit of it, not very much. From Fox News, Pacific Palisades Inferno forces thousands to flee. California homes, life-threatening winds whip the wildfire. Where is Palisades, by the way? Let's add that to the map. Maps. So, Palisades, Tahoe. I don't think this is the right place. Pacific Palisades. There we go. Because they're showing where the fire is on the map too. I was going to say, I didn't think that was going to be that far inland, especially if it said Pacific on it. So, we're about a ways west of Los Angeles. Kind of outside where the main highways are going outside of Los Angeles. You're not quite out to Thousand Oaks yet. Or up to Santa Clarita, which I know somebody who lives up there, and I know somebody who used to live out there. You're still in the Los Angeles area, and this does have the potential to spread down by Long Beach, Anaheim, San Bernardino, Pasadena, places like that. So, a lot of stuff going on here. This is close to Santa Monica, Culver City, Beverly Hills. It's not going to get as far as Beverly Hills and West Hollywood because, well, they'll stop it for that. It's a little ways south of Reseda, which many of you would know from Cobra Kai or The Karate Kid. Or Encino, if you have any interest in Brendan Fraser movies from the 90s. So, you're kind of right around, you're on the edge of Topanga State Park. And right around the middle of where the working class of Los Angeles lives and where the rich people live. Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, places like that. So, that is where that is going on. More than 13,000 buildings and 26,000 people are in the evacuation zone, which has been labeled under immediate threat, according to the LA Fire Department. As of 5:30 p.m., nearly 800 acres have burned, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. No injuries or fatalities have been confirmed, according to the LA Fire Department spokesperson, Margaret Stewart. Video from the scene shows at least 2 homes on fire in the area of Shadow Mountain Drive and Bienvenida Avenue. According to a report from Fox 11, at least a dozen homes on Shadow Mountain Drive are at threat. Give me 1 second. So a little bit of tickle going on up there. The Mogwai says that fire is wild. It is indeed. Gavin Newsom was near the blaze, being briefed by authorities, his office said. Him staying on the ground in the Pacific Palisades and getting briefed by Cal Fire on the Palisades fire in Los Angeles. So, while all your prison labor is going to be out there, Californians in the affected areas should stay alert and follow evacuation orders from local authorities. Let's watch. On the ground in Pacific Palisades and getting briefed by Cal Fire. Yeah, we read that already. Newsom also warned that Southern California was facing dangerous winds and extreme fire risk. Heat evacuation orders from local authorities, he said. A little bit surprising that you can have another wildfire in a place where you never manage your brush, of course, or anything else. And I mean, I don't want to see any destruction of people and their homes, but a lot of this it's continuing to vote for the policies that failed. It's the nicest way that I can put this. In a climate that's already dry, coming from a politician who likes to criticize Texas for shutting down during a once-in-a-century storm and losing power a couple years later, again during the cold that their power grid was never intended to deal with. And yet his state is on fire at least 2 times a year. From KTLA 5, interactive 3D map shows Palisades fire perimeter and evacuation zones. So if you know anybody in California, this will likely not affect you personally. I don't think I have a lot of viewership in California, but if you do know somebody in California, we'll look a little bit at the map here. So in the red there is under evacuation order. We've got alerts there so people can be ready to go on the evacuation order. Like I said, when we looked at the map, it looked like a lot of this was in some of the uninhabited area at the base of Topanga Canyon, which is good because, I mean, you don't want to see Topanga Canyon go up in flames, but at least there's a chance that most of it is away from where people are. But yes, there is still stuff going on where the people are and where the people settle thickly. We'll draw this one back out. We're in the San Fernando Valley over here, so that's a good ways away and nothing going over into Beverly Hills area or anything else like that. But if you know anybody in the area, in the red, please make sure that they get out. If they're not already aware, many of them are probably looking around saying, man, it's getting hot in here. Are we in hell? The fire burns 1,262 acres as high wind slams Southern California. From Marissa Wensky. Firefighters are battling a brush fire in the Pacific Palisades that quickly spread to 1,262 acres on Tuesday and triggered a mandatory evacuation amid warnings from weather forecasters of extreme wildfire risk. With the blaze exploding in size within the hour, authorities issued a mandatory evacuation for homes in the area around noon, along with some evacuation warnings by noon. The Pacific Coast Highway was completely shut down, with all lanes closed near Topanga Canyon Boulevard, according to the California Department of Transportation. At 10:30 a.m., the LA Fire Department first reported the blaze, saying it sparked near, let's get rid of this so we can read around it, 1190 North Piedra Morada Drive, and was estimated to be 20 acres at the time. About an hour later, at 11:30 a.m., the Department of Forestry and Fire estimated the wildfire was 200 acres within hours. Around 1500, the fire stood at 1,262 acres. So, the Westwood Recreation Center is open as an evacuation center, an overnight shelter for evacuees and small animals, according to fire authorities. So you have options in the area as well. Gavin Newsom was quoted saying the fire identifies as a controlled burn. It must have been a bad storm. Ted Cruz evacuated to a tropical island to be safe. To be safe and go home. I want to be safe at home. Safe at home. The Mogwai, by the way, resubscribed with Prime. He's been subscribed for 20 months. I missed you more than Hillary misses helping people with dirt on her across that multicolor bridge. A few different ways we're going into that one. I like it. Alright, another one from KTLA. Officials use bulldozers to shove abandoned vehicles out of the roadways near Palisades Fire. Yes, because people ran away on foot for whatever reason. And just left their keys behind. So, if they got to get equipment in, well, the only way to do so is to push the cars out of the way. Hello, insurance claim. Steve Gutenberg tried to warn them, but drivers who have abandoned their vehicles might find their cars a little worse for wear when they return. The Police Academy actor pleaded with his fellow Angelenos to leave keys in their car if they were to abandon the traffic jams near the Palisades Fire. Otherwise, firefighters might be hamstrung by gridlocked roads. What's happening is people are taking their keys with them as if they're in a parking lot, which it's Los Angeles at 9 o'clock in the morning. They kind of are. This is not a parking lot. We really need you to move their cars, he told KTLA Tuesday afternoon. If you leave your car behind, leave the keys so a guy can, move your car so that these fire trucks can get up in here. Boy, my voice is really worse for wear today. I don't fucking know why. Multiple drivers did not take the advice, however, and officials used a massive bulldozer to push stopped cars to the side of the road on Palisades Drive and create a path for emergency vehicles. If this is your car, unfortunately, it's an emergency situation, and this is what they have to do. Gene Kang explained from the scene. And here's what they had to do.
Yeah, I want to take you here live right now. So this is Pacific Palisades. All of these cars were ditched. So all of the drivers panicked. They took their keys. This is Palisades Drive as well as Sunset Boulevard. This dozer is just moving these vehicles out of the way. So if this is your car, unfortunately, it's an emergency situation, and this is what they have to do. They are moving the cars as we speak. Unfortunately, there are dozens of cars. This looks like a movie set. Unfortunately, this is real. LA County Fire, they have to do what they have to do. They need to clear a path. So literally, they're moving the cars, the SUVs. We're seeing Mercedes, very nice vehicles, Teslas up here, but that's because the car owners, they took their keys and they just started running. They left the cars here as the firefighters were trying to clear the pathway, clear the roadway. this is an emergency situation where, they need to get up to the homes. They want to make sure people are not trapped up there. But this line of cars probably goes about 300 feet deep, at least as long as I can see from this bird's eye view. So we're kind of staying back. They're in a situation here where they are literally moving these vehicles out of the way. Yes, it is causing damage.
Yes, it is causing damage, but so is the fire. Mogwai says, I think you reached the following people for comment on this one. Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray South, Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio, Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, Studebaker, Television North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe. That's a bunch of people. I hope they all get reached for comment at some point. Alright, that's the Palisades fire. Let's move on into our political news for the day. Congress certifies Trump's 2024 election victory 4 years after Capitol attack. From Kaya Hubbard, Catherine Watson, and Caitlin Yelek. Here's what to know about certifying Trump's victory, because this is a live updater. Get rid of that, go away. Congress is going to meet Monday to count the votes of the Electoral College and formally cement President-elect Trump's victory in the 2024 election. Harris, who lost to Trump in November, presided over Monday's joint session of Congress in her role as President of the Senate and announced the results of the vote. Big Don won 312 electoral votes in November compared to Harris's 226. There were no objections in the chamber, and each state's results were read aloud. The ceremony lasted less than 40 minutes, and the relatively perfunctory nature of the proceedings stood in stark contrast to 4 years ago, when an evil mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol to violently disrupt the process after his loss in 2020, with no weapons. In 22, Congress passed a law clarifying how states certified their electors and the vice president's role in counting the votes on January 6th. The change was aimed at preventing the strategy that Trump and his allies employed to challenge the results of the 2020 election. Heavy security, including fences and barriers around the Capitol, was in place for the joint session and Trump's inauguration later this month, which is, again, probably part of the reason that we didn't get the storming of the Capitol. Goats and Scarves is here. It's late, but Happy New Year. Well, you can always catch the replay. Will be posted in the Discord. Even with my scratchy voice. Why the certification process matters? Well, it's because that's how we decide who's going to be the next president. Pence welcomes return of order and civility. Blah, 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 blah. Harris concludes joint session of Congress. So, a couple things with this. Now, there were things in place. Because there were probably some more progressive groups out there who did want to go back in and make their voices heard. And say, hey, 14th Amendment this, and evil Donald Trump that, and a ton of other things that they like to come back and say with this kind of bullshit. None of it holds any weight, of course, but a couple things did happen. And a couple of things that happened made this almost an inevitability for Harris. Now, the big one is, like the live updater pointed out in What to Know. Congress did vote in 2022 to basically make this a ceremonial process. We have had in years past. Especially when a Republican wins. I remember all the objections during the Bush years. I remember the objections during Trump's first term. Under H.W. Bush, under Reagan. For Nixon the second time, for Nixon the first time. You always got on TV somebody jumping up there, running up to say, I object to the certification of this. Every single time a Republican electoral vote was counted. They didn't do that this time, partially because this is symbolic Partially because they wanted to make this situation symbolic as well, saying, we now accept the rules of everything and the outcome of everything. And yes, their brain-dead supporters are running out and begging them to come back out and object to this, or stop this, or do anything to it. But furthermore, especially coming to run Harris from the vice presidency without a primary, but that's actually not the important part of this. To run Harris onto this makes this extra symbolic. And the reason that I say that is because it would be visibly, oddly self-serving for Harris, who was the other participant in this particular election, to come back out and say, I cannot certify this election in good conscience because I won. If Biden had been running, if they'd have kept him in, or Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson, well, not Marianne Williamson because she's crazy and nobody wanted her to be president, but like if Dean Phillips had become the nominee through the primary process, it would have been less self-serving for Harris to come back out and say, no, I want this to be redone. I want this to be looked over. I object to this myself. I want to stop the count. I want a forensic audit, this, that, and the next thing. But the fact that Harris herself was the challenger means that the Democrat media would have found some way to go back and say, oh no, she's very brave for doing this, and this is what needs to be done, etc., etc., etc. But from a rational standpoint, no. It was not her place to do, and it's not something that she could have done and really gotten away with. That would have looked like insurrection. I hate to use that cringy, worn-out word, but that would have looked like insurrection. Oh, I think we're getting an Emperor's New Groove joke. I don't know if that's true or not because I've never seen that movie, but Mogwai says, I can't believe I'm saying this, but please, Trump, make it all 4 years. We don't want President Vance. Honestly, there are a lot of people that do. And there are people that want 4 more years of Trump after this as well. Let's listen to Harris's speech at the end of this. Hear Harris's message after official announcement of Trump as winner of 2024 election. We'll only do part of this because this is a 4-minute video. And I do have other stuff I want to get to.
The state of the vote for the President of the United States as delivered to the President of the Senate is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio has received 312 votes. Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected, President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January.
There's tears in her eyes as she's reading this here. The Mogwai says, I think you can hear both Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lindsey Graham orgasm in that video. He put organism, but I know what he meant by that. And Goats and Scarves says Oprah called. She wants her clapping audience soundtrack back. It's clapter, it's not laughter. Damn lawmakers recall no drama at Trump's election certification. We still have a democracy. From Aubrey Spady. Democratic lawmakers highlighted a smooth transition of power following 2024 election certification for President-elect Trump 4 years after protesters stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Lawmakers gathered for a joint session in D.C. on Monday to certify the Electoral College votes for Trump, and Vice President Harris presided over certification, overseeing her own defeat to Trump after losing the presidential election in November. Democratic lawmakers spoke with Fox News Digital as they left the ratification, recalling a no-drama ceremony, in contrast to Biden's certification 4 years prior. Well, and also Trump's certification 4 years before that, and W's certification in 04, or 05 rather, and W certification in 01, and HW certification in 88, and Reagan's certification, or 89 rather, Reagan certification in 85, Reagan certification in 81, Nixon certification in 72, Nixon certification in 68. You see where I'm going with this. We still have a democracy as long as we can keep it, Seth Magaziner, D. Rhode Island, told Fox News Digital when leaving the House floor, horribly butchering Franklin's quote on the state of our government, a republic if you can keep it. But we did have some protests going on outside. Election Wizard taking a video from Ford Fisher. A small group of radical leftists is demanding that members of Congress honor their oath and block the certification of Trump's, quote, landslide victory, which I wouldn't go that far either myself, but there's some honk-honk that goes along with that. Let's listen.
Lock him up! 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 Lock him up!
We've all gathered here today for the same reason, to demand that Congress uphold the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, specifically Section 3, that states that an insurrectionist cannot be president. And if you have any doubt that this guy is an insurrectionist, you should come out of the cave that you live in and get a supercomputer in your pocket like we all have, because all the information's out there and it's undeniable. Please hear me out, Democrats. Please stop blaming each other and saying we went too far left, or we should have done this, or we gotta be Joe Rogan, and no, you don't. We lost, and I'm using air quotes because I don't believe it. That's up to you if you do. We lost the election because a foreign adversary spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on bot farms to bombard half the country with Russian disinformation, and they beat it into their heads to the point that Americans started to parrot it, from Joe Rogan to Tim Pool. So I'm asking Democrats, stop blaming your fellow Americans and start blaming Russia. Start blaming the people within our own government that are working for and with Russia.
Spicy reference on the side of it.
Say what?
I was joking. I said it's a spicy reference on the
I know.
side.
Yeah, they're gonna take me away for being part of a terrorist ideology. But I mean, hey, I like the message.
What is your message to Congress here?
My message is to deny fascism, defend democracy, and oppose oligarchs. Congress, do your duty, uphold the 14th.
You don't even know what those words mean. And the 14th is just, I mean, that's innate stupidity to begin with. I've been mocking that on X and pointing out, like, when MAGA people come back out and ask them how that's supposed to work or what they mean by the 14th Amendment, I say, well, Section 3, which is the only part we've ever read, doesn't explicitly say conviction is necessary, so we can just yell insurrection 17,243 times, and that overturns 250 years of constitutional law. All right, in other election-related news, Republican Mike Johnson reelected House Speaker in dramatic floor vote. As everybody knew was going to happen, by the way. I am not a fan of this, but everybody in the world knew this was going to happen. The Mogwai says this is special kind of stupid, and Lunacy says state-owned actors. Mike Johnson, who literally nobody had ever heard about until he mysteriously got elected in as Speaker of the House, narrowly run re-election Friday as House Speaker on the first ballot, overcoming hard-right GOP holdouts and libertarians like Thomas Massie in a tense standoff and buoyed by a nod of support from President-elect Trump. The uneasy scene brought an ominous start to the first day of the new Congress. A small collection of hardline Republicans convened in the back of the House chamber, one by one declining to vote or choosing to vote for another lawmaker. Johnson's face turned grim, acknowledging a fresh turmoil and signaling trouble ahead for him as Trump returns to the White House with unified GOP control of Washington. In the end, it doesn't even matter. However, Johnson was able to flip two holdouts who switched to support him with help from Trump, who called the dissenting Republican lawmakers from his golf course. The final tally was 218 to 215. Johnson, visibly relieved, vowed to reject business as usual in his first speech with the gavel. I mean, he's going to give us business as usual no matter what, but he's vowed to reject it. Goats and Scarf says racist Republicans are destroying our tolerant democracy. Quick, let's blame the election loss on an ethnic group. It's those darn white males, I'm telling you. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of the government, he promised after putting through an omnibus that drastically raised the size and scope of government. Johnson's weak grip on the gavel was threatened not only by his own survival, but Trump's ambitious agenda of tax cuts and mass deportations as Republicans sweep to power. In the House and Senate, the stark vote tally laid bare the challenges he faces. Even backing from Trump himself, the usual sure bet for Republicans was no guarantee of Johnson's ability to stay in the Speaker's office. Hakeem Jeffries attempted to push past the Republican tumult of the past 2 years, saying it was time to come together, put party politics aside to get things done for Americans. What was once a ceremonial day with newly elected lawmakers arriving to be sworn into office, with family, friends, and children in tow, Republicans this year wearing long Trump-style red ties, has evolved into a high-stakes vote for the office of House Speaker, among the most powerful elected positions in Washington. Vice President Harris swore in the senators. Boo! I don't buy the Matt Gaetz stuff. Mogwai says, I'm hearing angry Matt Gaetz noises. That either means he's against Mike Johnson or he missed the winter 9th grade dance again. Boo! I don't like Matt Gaetz, but I'm not going to smear him over something that was unproven. He's got plenty of stuff that's proven that we can smear him over. He is an asshole. And he's a terrible person, but he's not a pedo. While the Senate is able to convene its own and already elected party leaders, John Thune is a Republican majority leader who vowed in his first speech to preserve the legislative filibuster, and Chuck U. Schumer for the Democratic minority. The House must first elect its Speaker, its role required by the Constitution, second in the line of succession to the presidency. So he's back in, which means, hey, we get 2 more years of spending out our assholes. We get 2 more years of money going out to the Ukraine. We get 2 years of wondering whether or not we'll actually go to war with one of these countries. We'll get 2 more years of nothing getting the fuck done. Thanks, Mike Johnson. No repeals. No refunds. Speaker Johnson's push to pass Trump's agenda in one massive bill faces big hurdles. Fucking good. Approving Trump's plans for immigration, energy, tax policy, and more in one multi-trillion-dollar bill would be a daunting challenge. Johnson also said he wants to add a debt limit extension to it. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Fuck you, I was right. I don't have enough room to spin in my chair. From Sahil Kapoor, Scott Wong, and Julie Sirkin. Mike Johnson is laying out a highly ambitious strategy to answer President-elect Trump's call to pass his agenda in one big, beautiful bill. Because, of course, he said it that way. A plan that will test the limits of his wafer-thin Republican majority. Johnson said Sunday the party line bill will include provisions about border security, energy, manufacturing, and tax policy. He also called for extending the debt ceiling in the same bill and passing it out of the House as early as the first week of April. No. No. Bad. 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 No. That's an exceptionally tall order for a tiny House majority of 219 to 215 that's expected to shrink even further in the coming months as 2 GOP members resign to join the Trump admin. When that happens, Johnson won't be able to lose a single vote without needing help from Democrats until the seats are filled. Excuse me. Republicans plan to use the budget reconciliation process to pass the massive Trump agenda package that allows them to bypass the 60-vote threshold in the Senate, where Republicans have 53 seats after January 20th. A tie-breaking vote from incoming Vice President J.D. Vance can cut Democrats out of the process. Key senators, including John Thune, have been pushing to break it up into 2 bills, allowing Republicans to score a quick victory on border funding and take some time to craft a second tax bill. But Johnson and Trump say they prefer a single package. The plan in the House has been one bill. We met for 2 days over the weekend with 2 full days of discussion and strategizing. With that in mind, so that's our assumption right now, Johnson told reporters on Monday, the Senate has a little different opinion and perspective on reconciliation and what the wisest strategy is in the House, and that's okay. That's part of the process. No! And see, this is why I'm not a Republican. Right here, it's bullshit like this. We have heard from the Donald, from Mike Johnson, from the GOP members on the ground, from the GOP members in Congress. Single item bills. No omnibus packages. No debt ceiling extension. We have heard this for 4 fucking years. I understand, and the Biden admin tried to do the same thing in their first year in office, but that reached hurdles going through the GOP as well because of the vote thresholds that they had in the first 2 years. But all that I heard for the last 4 years was we need to have single issue bills. We need to have this out here so people can read it. I want to know how much foreign aid is going to be tucked into this. How big this bill is going to be. How many pages is this going to be? How many days are they going to be getting to read this? I get what they're trying to do. I just think it's a load of fucking shit. After everything that we've heard over the last 4 years. They're trying to get through because they can't afford to lose anybody in the Senate and get it past the filibuster. So they can't run individual line item bills. They can only do one budget reconciliation per term, per fiscal term. So in this Congress, they'll only get 2. That's the reason that they're trying to do it that way. But it's still a load of fucking shit. This right here is why I'm not a Republican, because they are no different than Democrats. They do the same shit. But just like when I've been going through and marking on Democrat posts where they are blatantly vacating the rules and dancing around the rules. The rules that they set in place. And criticize Republicans for using, and then going back and doing the same thing. I go back out and I post on their X posts, on their comments, and I put, that's different with the D in parentheses to look like the DNC logo. And now they're going to do the same goddamn thing. Or at least attempt to. Fuck you, Mike Johnson. Practice what you preach, you fucking hypocrite. National File has Mike Johnson's first act as House Speaker. Adopt Nancy Pelosi's House rule for the motion to vacate. And Speaker Johnson took Nancy's rule and made it worse. Jefferson's rule, 1 member to file. Nancy Pelosi's rule, 5. Mike Johnson's rule, 9 members required to file to vacate the speakership chair. Changes to the standing rules resolution causing a vacancy to the office of Speaker. Subsection A provides that a resolution causing a vacancy in the office of Speaker shall not constitute question or privileges of the House under Rule 9 unless it's offered by a member of the majority party and has accumulated 8 co-sponsors of the majority party at the time it is offered. You know why? Because the Freedom Caucus only has 7 fucking members. Fuck you too. We're back to Bush years, baby. And I fucking hate it. Alright, we had a couple weird terror attacks happen on January 1st itself. Let's talk about those, starting with the Trump Tower, the quartering, fellow Wisconsin man, Jeremy. Cybertruck just blew up in front of Trump Tower. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Alright, and another angle on that one. The Cartier family, video footage of the Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump Tower, WTF. So this is coming from the outside. If you are watching on Instagram, remember you can't see the video we're watching and hearing through my headphones. So join that YouTube link. That's in my description.
Copy.
Kaboom, it goes.
Copy.
All right, and we read from the Associated Press. Soldier shot self in head before Cybertruck exploded outside of Trump's Las Vegas hotel Officials say, I do not buy a word of what I just read. Just so you know. Let's see. Margwai says, is buying Greenland in that bill asking for our debt ceiling? Probably. Mogwai says, Lindsey Graham agrees with them. He loves a huge package. The Mogwai has given us a gay joke. As far as the Cybertruck, the Mogwai says, I think that might hurt the resale value. Just saying. The highly decorated army soldier inside of a Tesla Cybertruck, packed with fireworks that exploded outside Trump International Hotel in Vegas, shot himself in the head just before detonation, authorities said on Thursday. The explosion caused minor injuries to 7 people, but virtually no damage to the hotel because the fucking thing is built like a steel tank. Clark County Sheriff Kevin McCahill and said Matthew Leibelsberger, a 37-year-old Green Beret, likely planned a more damaging attack, but the steel-sided vehicle absorbed much of the force from the crudely built explosive. Damage from the blast was mostly limited to the interior of the truck because the explosion vented out and up and didn't hit the Trump Hotel doors just a few feet away, the sheriff said. The level of sophistication is not what we expect from an individual with this type of military experience, said Kenny Cooper, special agent in charge for the ATF. Authorities are still working to determine the motive. It is not lost on us that it's in front of the Trump building, that it's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have information at this point that definitively tells us or suggests it was because of a particular ideology, said Spencer Evans, the Las Vegas FBI special agent in charge. Lavelsberger recently returned from an overseas assignment in Germany and was on approved leave when he died, according to a U.S. official. There are a lot of conspiracy theories going around with this one. And a lot of it makes a lot of sense. I don't say that often about conspiracy theories, obviously, but a lot of them do make a lot of sense at this point. The guy shot himself in the head with a .50 caliber. There's no mention on what firearm it came out of. No mention really even if it was an Action Express round or if it was a full-size .50 caliber rifle round. If it was a rifle round, there's no way. And I've never been in the Cybertruck cabin, so I don't know exactly how much room you have by the steering wheel or for using self-driving from the passenger side, but I mean, a Barrett is like 7 feet long. If you're going rifle, you did not shoot yourself in the head with that fucking Barrett. I can tell you that. It was an Action Express, it'd be a little bit more believable because, I mean, it's a big gun. Trust me, I know, but, I mean, it's still only this big. It's like holding a 2x4, too. But, I mean, do we have the Desert Eagle? Yeah, the ads help. I will definitely come out and say that. The ads do help. So thank you for that. Palm is here, but late. Needs to reset subscription, which also helps, by the way. Mogwai says, I believe the bullet was from a CIA-issued weapon. Possible. Okay, so they do say they have the handgun and another firearm. No indication of what that is. Law enforcement officials said investigators learned through interviews that he may have gotten into a fight with his wife about relationship issues shortly before he rented the Tesla and bought the guns. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the ongoing investigation. So, anonymous sources. Among the charred items found inside the truck were a handgun at Leibelsberger's feet, another firearm, a number of fireworks, passport, military ID that somehow did not get charred or damaged at all in the explosion, credit cards, an iPhone, a smartwatch. McMahill said authorities said both guns were purchased legally. One moment. Excuse me. Investigators identified the driver, who was burned beyond recognition, as Leibelsberger of Colorado Springs. Cause of death was suicide by gunshot, according to the Clark County coroner. Identifying by his ID that mysteriously didn't get damaged. Leibelsberger served in the Green Beret. He served in the Army since '06, rising through the ranks with a long career of overseas assignments, deploying twice to Afghanistan and serving Ukraine, Tajikistan, Georgia, Congo, the Army said. So, a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of stuff going on there. From the New York Post. Special Forces soldier who blew up the Cybertruck outside Trump Hotel in Vegas used generative ID. From the Associated Press. A highly decorated soldier who exploded a Cybertruck outside of Trump Hotel in Vegas used generative AI, including ChatGPT, to help plan the attack, Vegas police said on Tuesday. A laptop, a cell phone, and watch were still under review a week after Leibelsberger fatally shot himself before the truck blew up. Again, somehow, a laptop and a cell phone not enduring any damage at all. A review of Leibelsberger's searches through ChatGPT indicated he was looking for information on explosive targets, the speed at which certain rounds of ammunition would travel, and whether fireworks were legal in Arizona. The Army Green Beret was deployed to Afghanistan and lived in Colorado Springs. By the way, things that a Green Beret should know. And left notes saying the explosion was a stunt meant to be a wake-up call for the nation's troubles, officials said last week. I'm not saying you should have encyclopedic memory of these things, but as a Green Beret, you should at least have the access to the information at close hand. Because that is a part of your training. He left cell phone notes saying he needed to cleanse his mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I've took. The explosion caused minor injuries to 7 people, but virtually no damage to the hotel. Authorities in Leibelsberger said that Leibelsberger acted alone. Leibelsberger's letters touched on political grievances, societal problems, and domestic and international issues, including Ukraine. He wrote that the U.S. was terminally ill and headed towards collapse. They're trying so hard to make this guy into a right-winger. And I don't even believe that he was the one in the truck. I want to skip this because that's saying the same thing the other one did. Kaneko the Great. Vegas Metro released messages found on Leibelsberger's phone in the Cybertruck. This was not a terrorist attack, it was a wake-up call. Mogwai says, I'm the CIA. You might remember from such fuck-ups like January 6th, Fun Fest, and tacos in Waco. Tacos in Waco is the name of my Twisted Sister cover band. Reading from some of this, we are the U.S., the best country of people to ever exist, but right now we're terminally ill and headed towards a collapse. We're crumbling because of lack of self-respect, morales, and respect for others. Greed and gluttony has consumed us. The top 1% decided long ago they weren't going to bring everyone else with them. You are cattle to them. We have strayed from family values and corrupted our minds, and I'm a prime example of having it all but never being enough. A lot of us are just sitting around waiting to die. No sunlight, no steps, no fresh air, no hope. Our children are addicted to screens, and by the age of 2, we're filling our bodies with processed foods. This is not a manifesto of a terrorist. Holy shit. This is ChatGPT going through my Discord and trying to determine what it is that right-wingers say. This is like ChatGPT went into 27 different right-wing, quote, Discord servers and 4chan and picked out buzzwords and put them all together. Holy shit. We must end the war in Ukraine with negotiated settlement. It's the only way. Focus on strength and winning. Masculinity is good, and men must be leaders. Strength is a deterrent, and fear is the product. Weeded out in those government and military who do not idealize number 2. The income inequality in this country and cost of living is outrageous. The number of homeless on our streets is embarrassing and disgusting. Have some pride and take care of this. Stop obsessing over diversity. We are all diverse, and DEI is cancer. This is a list of buzzwords. Thankfully, we rejected the DEI candidate, and we'll have a real president instead of weekend at Bernie's. There is something off about this one, dude. But even stranger is the one in New Orleans the same day. Goes and Scarf says, I used to watch James Bond and think CIA was such a cool job. Yeah, same. Now the CIA is more like Get Smart. Palm says, I did that. Mog says, I honestly think they're more like the Naked Gun, which is an apt comparison. And I haven't seen the Naked Gun, by the way, since it first came out in 1992. But I still remember the irreverent humor of it. Goats and Scarf says, I haven't seen that one, but I'll have to check it out. Mog says, it isn't the CIA, but you'll understand when you watch it. And Ghost and Scarf says, I've seen various clips of Leslie Nielsen. I'm sure I'd like it. Yeah, it's good. From CBS News. At least 14 killed, dozens hurt on Bourbon Street in New Orleans as driver intentionally slams truck into crowd, attacker dead. A man intentionally drove a pickup truck into a crowd of revelers on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, French Quarter, in a deadly rampage earlier on New Year's Day. At least 14 people were killed before the attacker died in a shootout with police, officials said. Dozens of others were injured in the attack. A black ISIS flag was flying from the truck's rear bumper, and FBI called the attack an act of terrorism. The shills were out on this one. They were trying so hard to make this into an America First attack. Now, the initial reporting said that it was an illegal immigrant. That wound up not being true. It was a person born and raised in Texas. But it was an Arabic man raised in Texas, identified as Shamsud Din Jabbar, who, yes, was likely radicalized by something or the other. In a televised remark on Wednesday, Biden said the FBI has determined that just hours before the attack, Jabbar posted videos to social media indicating he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The vehicle was an electric Ford pickup truck that appears to have been rented, the FBI said. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said on social media Jabbar rented the truck on December 30th while living in Houston area before heading to New Orleans. FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Raya said at a news conference Thursday the attack was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act, he said, while the FBI initially thought that Jabbar might have had help carrying out the attack. I think he did, by the way. Raya said that as of Thursday, the Bureau believes no one else was involved. In further news off of this, Retro Coast, with the breaking, reports the FBI Regional Task Force responsible for New Year's security in New Orleans deliberately ordered the vehicle safety barriers to be lowered. Yes, they're automatic raising and lowering barriers to let vehicles through when need be through on the French Quarter, but for the most part to keep vehicles out. To keep situations from like this happening, because they're typically people packed into this street that you're seeing in front of you right now if you're watching on video. If you're watching on audio, you see the, I believe, steel barriers, just poles sticking up, just narrow enough to make sure a vehicle can't get through. Now, there's a community note for this, saying this account promoting false information about the FBI's role in street barriers that were down due to construction for monetary benefit and engagement farming purposes. I still do have questions about why they were down, specifically on one of the busier times. Like, especially since they can be raised and lowered. Yes, they can be closed for construction purposes, and it looks like it's not raise and lower. It looks like it is a sliding one, by the way. Sliding back and forth for that, not up and down. But regardless, if they can easily slide up and down, or in and out like that, then when you have festivities on New Year's, you can go close them back off. I have problems with this one. I'm not going to rate that as not helpful right now, but I will do that after stream. So we've already got the ID on that one. Suspect was inspired by ISIS, was a military veteran. We know that one from the last article. Why has ISIS not yet claimed the New Orleans vehicle attack? From Nick Patton Walsh. I'm going to give you a different take on this, by the way, than what they're going to put out. It's the deadliest attack by an ISIS supporter in the West in several years, but still almost a week later, the group known as the Islamic State has yet to issue its trademark claim of responsibility for the horrific New Year's violence in New Orleans. There may be mundane technical reasons for a delay, or there may be another explanation. The group genuinely had no foreknowledge of the attack and is reluctant to make a false claim. No, that's not the case, by the way. If they can make the claim and it causes division in the U.S., they are on that shit like a fly on, well, shit. But many analysts have suggested a lack of foreknowledge does not stop the group from trying to associate itself with attacks in the past. An extreme example of its brief attempt to claim the October 2017 mass shooting at Vegas Festival as its own operation. So there could be another rationale behind the attack, or the lack of claim for the attack, which killed 14 and injured dozens. It's the kind of atrocity that many observers have warned ISIS has wanted to perpetrate in the U.S. for part of its revival. There's no question it was IS inspired, said Edmund Fitton Brown, senior advisor to the Counter-Extremism Project. So why would they not grab it gratefully? It seems like an unmissable opportunity to claim a direct hit on the biggest Satan. Peter Newman says it would be very unusual for ISIS not to claim the attack, given the attacker openly declared his allegiance to the group, even put an ISIS flag on the truck. Newman said that while ISIS affiliates in Afghanistan and Africa were growing, the group remains on the defensive in Iraq and Syria. That's why many believe the group's media operation, including its news agency, Al-Maq, is situated. That's not it. You guys are both wrong, by the way. Here's the reason why. Given the fact that we are in political turmoil right now, and the attacker was an American-born military operation, whether or not it was ISIS-inspired, whether or not they planned it, whether or not they rented the truck for him, is irrelevant. Because them not claiming it pushes further division and further divide among the American people. If they did claim it, at this point, then a lot of Americans, especially within the GOP, but even Democrats at that point, would all be united against ISIS and wanting to get behind the former president. With them not claiming the attack, there are people out here who are saying this gentleman was MAGA. I don't know what his political beliefs are, either. The ISIS flag suggests to me that he was not MAGA, but there's a possibility that he could be, and them not claiming this leaves it out on the table for all of us to sit and debate, fight over this, and draw our lines in the sand against each other in something that's more divisive than many other things that ISIS could have perpetrated openly. I don't know what this guy's ideology was, but I mean, there are things that come out and say, yes, it could be ISIS inspired. There are things that come out and say that this could be domestically inspired. The fact that this guy's truck and the Cybertruck were both rented from the same company definitely raises some questions. But as long as half of America thinks that he's ISIS and half of America thinks that he's MAGA, we're going to sit back and fight over this entire fucking thing. That's why they haven't claimed credit for it. A brief one from Business Insider. Both the Tesla Cybertruck that exploded and the New Orleans attack vehicle were rented using the Turo app. That's really all we need to go with that. That's a celebrity-backed company, by the way. It's similar to Airbnb or Vrbo, but for vehicles instead of homes. But it's also a situation where the person at the counter doesn't necessarily have to see who the person was that came in and rented the truck. We cannot conclusively verify the identity of all guests, nor do we verify or screen third parties who may be present during a trip using the vehicle booked through our platform. The March filing said, our trust and safety processes focus primarily on guests to reduce the risk of vehicle theft and motor vehicle accidents. And yes, that's a part of the reason that they use that app, is so that we don't know who actually perpetrated these whole things. I'm not even going to read this article, but I'm going to read the headline, and then I'm going to answer the question. Why attackers use vehicles as weapons to kill innocent people in crowds? From Holly Yan. I can sum it up for you in one word. Availability. Firearms purchases are closely monitored. We know this. Automatic weapon purchases are very closely monitored and are an act of God to go through. The ATF is typically in your home if you try to put an explosive together or do something that may be suspected of putting an explosive together, almost immediately, and usually when your neighbors narcs you out. Nobody's going to question it if you go and rent a vehicle or buy a vehicle, because most of us have one. That's why they use them as weapons to kill innocent people in crowds. Mogwai says it's MAGA ISIS. Did they buy the extra insurance on the rental? If not, they better hide that. Hide in that MAGA bill. Possibly. Shortly after this, there was a hostage situation in Vegas. Vegas is rocked by a hostage situation on a bus just hours after the Cybertruck attack. Crisis negotiators rushed to a scene in Vegas where a person had barricaded himself on a bus. The latest threat comes hours after a Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump Hotel, sparking fears of a coordinated terror attack. Police on the scene near Fremont Street and Charleston Boulevard, which is Freeside for those of you who are aficionados of Fallout New Vegas, along with SWAT teams and crisis negotiators. They have since taken the person into custody without incident. It's understood that the person barricaded himself onto a bus, however, it was not immediately clear if there were others locked inside. So this one wound up being absolutely nothing, but it's interesting that it happened on the same day as the Cybertruck attack. A couple more, then we'll go on to things I like and things that I hate and head out of here for the night, including the review of what I started the episode with. A judge sets Trump's sentencing in hush money case for January 10th. Excuse me, but signals no jail time. Excuse me. From Michael Sisak and Jennifer Peltz. In extraordinary turn, a judge Friday set President-elect Trump's sentencing in his hush money criminal case for January 10th, a little over a week before he's due to return to the White House, but indicated he wouldn't be jailed. The development nevertheless leaves Trump on the course to be the first president to take office convicted of felony crimes, which was the point. Merchan, who presided over the trial, signaled in a written decision he'd sentence the former president to what's known as an unconditional discharge, in which a conviction stands, but the case is closed without jail time, a fine, or probation. Trump can appear virtually for sentencing if he chooses. Rejecting Trump's push to dismiss the verdict and throw out the case on presidential immunity grounds, and because his impending second term, Merchan wrote that only bringing the finality to this matter would serve the interests of justice. Translation: this is symbolic to make sure that everybody can run around and scream convicted felon for the next 4 years. He said he sought to balance Trump's ability to govern, unencumbered bullshit, by the case against other interests, the U.S. Supreme Court's July ruling on presidential immunity, and the public's expectation that all are equal and no one's above the law, and the importance of respecting a jury verdict. The court is simply not persuaded that the first factor outweighs others in the state of proceeding. Merchan wrote in an 18-page decision, "This is literally symbolic." And I mean, we all knew that if he was going to be appearing by Zoom, then it's going to happen. They did try to appeal to this. That came down today. Appeals court denies Trump's bid to halt Friday's hush money sentencing. From Aaron Katursky and Peter Charalambos. A New York appeals judge has denied Trump's request to delay the January 10th sentencing in his criminal hush money case. Trump's sentencing will proceed as planned on Friday, pending potential additional legal maneuvers by the president-elect's lawyers. Judge Ellen Gessmer rejected Trump's claim that the case should be delayed because of the presidential immunity after his his attorney argued before the court that Trump is covered by presidential immunity that extends to him while he waits to be sworn in. That is not true, by the way. Even if he was president right now, this would not be covered under presidential immunity because it was not an official act. Like the analogy I said made, if I still own a vehicle with a loan on it when I take the presidency, and I don't sell it because, well, once you're the president, you can't drive. But if for some stupid reason everybody else in the world is dead and I am elected as president of the United States, and I still own a vehicle out on a loan, when I write the check from my personal salary to pay the loan, that is not an official act. When Trump goes and pays his lawyer, his personal lawyer, that's not an official act. So the immunity thing wouldn't fall through. That was a bunch of bullshit. Because that was not an official act of the office. The appellate court heard arguments Tuesday in Trump's lawsuit against the judge in the case, Merchan and Bragg, as part of Trump's effort to halt the sentencing following his criminal conviction in May. "We should get a stay so that no further action happens," Todd Blanche said during oral arguments at the Appellate Division's first judicial department. "The imposition is extraordinary." Judge Alan Gessmer questioned whether immunity granted to sitting presidents extends to presidents-elect. It doesn't matter if it does or not. That's not an official act. Blanche replied that he didn't have any evidence that immunity extended to presidents-elect. Yeah, none of this is about immunity. I don't know why they keep bringing this back up. I mean, this isn't a felony either, but that's beside the point. All right. In the Judge Cannon side of things, Cannon temporarily blocks release of Jack Smith report. I am against this. Partially because I don't think that he has shit. And I want him to be exposed to that through the world. From Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney. Elaine Cannon has temporarily blocked the Justice Department from releasing Special Counsel Smith's final report on his 2 criminal investigations into Trump. The extraordinary move, coming just days before Smith's office is expected to shut down, scrambles the final stages of the Special Counsel's work. Smith is expected to wrap up and deliver to A.G. Garland the final report laying out the results of his probes into Trump's handling of classified documents after he left office in 2021 and his attempt to subvert the 2020 election. Garland has said he would release the report publicly in some form. I highly doubt that, by the way. I'm pretty sure he's going to block that in some way, if it's not favorable to the Biden admin. But Cannon's order, issued at the request of 2 Trump allies who were co-defendants in the classified documents case, bars the DOJ from releasing the report or any portion until 3 days after a federal appeals court rules on the issue. The order bars Garland, the DOJ, and Smith and all of their officers, agents, and employees and persons acting in active concert or participation with such individuals from releasing, sharing, or transmitting the final report or any drafts of such report outside the DOJ. There's going to be an intern that releases it, by the way. And that intern is going to spend the rest of his life in federal prison. It's going to get leaked. It's going to get leaked exactly like the Roe versus Wade Dobbs decision. Unless, of course, it's not favorable to the Biden admin, and then you're never going to see the fucking thing. Cannon's order does not apply to Trump or his co-defendants, even though Smith contends they inappropriately revealed aspects of the report, which they have reviewed in recent days in a Monday court filing. In that filing, Trump revealed Smith described him as engaged in an unprecedented criminal effort as the head of a criminal conspiracy and that he harbored a criminal design. Cannon threw out Smith's prosecution of Trump and 2 co-defendants last July after concluding Garland's appointment of Smith was illegal. The DOJ appealed that ruling but dropped the part of the appeal pertaining to Trump after he won the election in November. But the appeal seeking to reinstate the charges against the 2 allies remains pending, raising doubts about Cannon's authority to act in the case. I hope they do release it. I want to see what's in it. I want to see what he's got. Put your cards on the table. This is, I believe, an op-ed. I'm going to read briefly into this one. Trump spent years trying to undermine Smith. Now he wants to block the special counsel's final word, from Tierney Sneed and Caitlin Polance. Cannon blocked the release of the special counsel Smith's report. The court by that prompted Cannon's orders to capstone of Trump's years-long assault on the institution of special counsels, and the president-elect is seeking to capitalize on the earlier victories that undermined Smith's office. Yeah, this is all stuff that was in the last article. I hope that gets overturned, because I think Smith is going to get embarrassed by this one. I want to see what's in there. And to me, it's exactly the same. And I know this will piss a lot of the MAGA people off. I don't give a fuck about them. I don't want to see any of the political people go to jail, because it is going to be political retaliation if they go to jail. But what I do want to see is the truth. If we give immunity to Cheney and Biden and Harris and all the people from the January 6th committee and Kinzinger and people like that, if they all get immunity from this, with the only thing that they have is having to speak under oath under threat of perjury about what they did in office, but they can never be punished for it, I would be okay with that, because I don't care about putting political enemies in jail. I want the truth. That's all that I want out of any of this. And in the end, Biden burning things down on his way out of office. From CNN, Biden permanently bans offshore drilling in 625 million acres of ocean, making a Trump reversal difficult. But not impossible, and I feel like that's going to get reversed. Just not right away when we are supposed to start drill baby drilling. From David Goldman, Ella Nielsen, and Matt Egan over at CNN. Biden announced in an executive action on Monday that will permanently ban future offshore oil and gas developments in parts of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in a way that could especially be difficult for incoming Trump administration to undo. Biden's executive action will ban new oil and gas leasing across 625 million acres of U.S. ocean. The ban will prevent oil companies from leasing waters for new drilling areas along the entire East Coast, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, coasts of Washington, Oregon, and California, and portions of the North Bering Sea. The decision reflects what coastal communities and businesses of beachgoers have known for a long time. Drilling off these coasts would cause irreversible damage to places we hold dear, and is unnecessary to meet our nation's energy needs, Biden said in a statement. It's not worth the risks. Which is funny because all of his paid shills are saying what the rest of us are thinking, and this is a giant FU on his way out the door. He pledges to unban that immediately, per the Hill's Rachel Frazen. Trump blasted Biden's decision to block oil drilling across large swaths of the U.S. coastline, saying he will unban it. It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately, Trump said during an interview Monday with Hugh Hewitt. However, it's not totally clear whether he'll be able to do so. He will, by the way. It probably will take some time and get tied up in the courts, but he will be able to undo it. It's by executive fiat. So it can be undone. But the way that Biden did it, going through a little-known piece of legislation that's been on the books for years, does make it a little bit difficult to go through and do. Trump tried to reinstate drilling in areas blocked off by former President Obama, but he was blocked by doing so in court. In 2019, a judge ruled that the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act gives presidents the right to block drilling in certain areas, but not to reinstate it. Nevertheless, in the interview with Hewitt, Trump asserted he would be able to reverse Biden's actions. And again, I've read the Continental Shelf Lands Act, and yes, he can, but it might not be until 2028 before he gets everything through the courts. And I mean, that's going to include a lot of feet dragging and everything to do so. But yes, I am confident that he can. I have the right to unban it immediately, he said. Incorrectly, of course. From Axios, Biden discussed plans to strike Iran nuclear sites if Tehran speeds towards the bomb. From Barack Ravid, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan presented Biden with options for a potential U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities that they totally are not making nuclear bombs with. That's what Democrats have been telling me for 10 years, 15 years. If Iranians move towards nuclear weapon before January 20th. In a meeting several weeks ago that remained secret until now, 3 sources with knowledge of the issues tell Axios A U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear program during the lame duck period would be an enormous gamble from a president who promised he would not allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, but who would also risk handing a fresh conflict over to his successor. Biden did not greenlight a strike during the meeting and has not done so since, the sources said. So, once again, burn it all down on his way out the door. And lastly, Biden honors Hillary Clinton and Michael J. Fox with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. We'll look at this video briefly. We'll talk about the Soros thing and why this honestly really doesn't fucking matter either. A lot of people gave this a lot more weight than it really had.
Hillary Rodham Clinton. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hillary Rodham Clinton is guided by the Methodist Creed, do all the good you can, in all the ways you can. As a lawyer, she defended the rights of children. As First Lady, she fought for universal health care and declared women's rights are human rights. As Senator, she helped New York rebuild after September 11, 2001. As Secretary of State, she championed democracy worldwide, and her nomination for president broke barriers and inspired generations. Through it all, her career has been dedicated to an eternal truth. America's ideals are sacred, and we must always defend and live by them. Michael J. Fox. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox is one of the most beloved actors of our time. With remarkable wit and charm, he introduced iconic characters to the center of American culture, from Alex P. Keaton to Marty McFly and more. With undaunted resilience and optimism, he also warms hearts and captivates audiences as a fearless advocate for those with Parkinson's disease, channeling his endearing personality to advance treatments, move us closer to a cure, and remind us of the power of American possibilities.
So I'm totally in support of Michael J. Fox getting the Medal of Freedom based on his work for Parkinson's. Not necessarily for his acting, even though I like one of the movies that he's most famous for is one of my favorite movies. I don't think that's entirely a great reason to get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, why this doesn't matter, especially with Hillary and then George Soros also getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom, is the fact that, I mean, even with my perceived right-wing bias, for whatever you take that as, I looked at the Limbaugh Medal of Freedom, and I felt that the whole thing just cheapened it and made it into a partisan exercise. So, yes, of course, Biden is going to come back and make this into a partisan exercise, because the precedent was set to make it into a partisan exercise, and before Limbaugh got it, Barack Obama was making it into a partisan exercise as well. So the whole thing has just been cheapened to a point that I'm almost sorry that Fox got it, because of the fact that it's so cheap. Not necessarily because he doesn't deserve it. He does. I stand by that. But it's a meaningless gesture at this point. When you can go back and turn around and use it to advance your political agenda. So that's where I stand on that. I know a lot of people were up in arms about the fact that Hillary got it, that Soros got it. I mean, the speech about Hillary that we just listened to was a flat-out lie about her using the Methodist creed of making the world, or using your resources to make the world better. But yeah, it's nothing but a partisan exercise at this point. So I can't even be bothered to get mad about it, even though, again, I know a lot of people did. All right, well, let's close out the show. It might be a little bit of a long close, but let's close it all out. We're going to start today with the rules of acquisition. I got to think about which one we were at because, hey guys, it's been 3 weeks since we've had this discussion on the rules of acquisition. We're in the 70s, I thought. Let's see, where were we at? We are in the 70s. Because the last one we did was from the DS9 episode Homecoming. Every once in a while, declare peace, it confuses the hell out of your enemies. Which I just watched that episode not that long ago. And then the 77th rule of acquisition, which will be questioned for its canonicity, because I get a question for it every single time. We use one from Star Trek Online, but we're going to use it. The 77th rule of acquisition, it's a basic quid pro quo. I mean, a lot of these have a lot of philosophical thought to them. They do. And we do have to question whether or not you can actually use them in regular parlance with capitalism, or how many of them were used to mock capitalism by avowed communist Gene Roddenberry. But this one is pretty straightforward. If you break it, I'll charge you for it. From Star Trek Online, it's simple. You break my stuff, you pay for it. And I'll charge you for it, so there's a contract saying that you have to pay for it. We can't go much simpler than that one on this one. So your 77th rule of acquisition, if you break it, I'll charge you for it. Let's do a couple things that I like and a bunch of things that I hate. Some things I like. Now, Fetterman, I have had some on-the-fence feelings for. He went on Rogan and he did nothing but spew Democrat platitudes. Literally. And he is terrible on the concept of firearms control, taxation, and redistribution of wealth. But he seems willing, at least the idea to entertain working across the aisle, trying to be bipartisan, and maybe not throwing MAGA as the demonic cult that the rest of Democrats make it out to be. And I think he wants to try to get some of their votes from them for 2028. Whether or not he's sincere about any of this or not, I don't know. But Aaron Rupar, who's probably pissed off about the fact that he had to write this, says, Fetterman says Trump has political talent, that's undeniable. And adds, I never believed it was about fascism. That's not a word that regular people use. Except it really has been in the past few weeks. Let's listen.
And after you survived an assassination, you literally were shot in your head, and had the presence of mind to respond. You know, fight, fight, fight. I mean, that's a political talent. It's undeniable. And also, I never believed that it was about fascism. And for me, that made it difficult for
Kamala Harris said that he was a fascist.
Yeah, well, it's like that's her prerogative. I mean, but it's not a word that I would use, because you put a lot of Democrats, especially in my state, that I know and I happen to love people that are going to vote for Trump, and they are not fascists. And also fascism, that's not a word that regular people, use. That, I think people are going to decide who is the candidate that's going to protect and project you know, my version of the American way of life, and that's what happened. And after you survived an assassination, you literally were shot in your head, and had the.
So, I think he's trying. I don't trust him, but I felt the same way with Tulsi too. I still don't trust Tulsi Gabbard. I think it's cool that she's anti-war, but she's also really been anti-gun throughout her time in Congress, and I have a really hard time saying that she's this rock-ripped conservative now. So, but when they say right and they try to work with things, then I'll praise them. That's always been my rule here. Oh, that was the article I did in the background when we were watching a video, and one saved it back to the Discord. Other things that I like today, coming from Spectrum News 1, Amish from Pennsylvania build homes in Boone. This gave me such a great opportunity to give back to the community that I love living in and has given me so much, Luke Henry says. He's helping to build 12 tiny homes located in a parking lot at Cornerstone Summit Church. Henry says when he saw the homes being built, he had to come by and find out who was doing it. I was talking to Brother Aaron, the name of the Amish gentleman leading the crew, and Brother Aaron explained to me that they are here building temporary housing units for people displaced by Helene. However, they had to leave at the end of the day, Henry said. He says there were close to 50 men building 12 homes in 2 days. They got them done about 90% of the way. They erected everything from the outside in, framed out the walls, framed in the roof, ran the electric, Henry said. Henry said it all started with a man who came to the area from Pennsylvania and saw the damage. That man went to his local Amish community and asked for help. He then raised the money to both get them here and help them build the sheds. So, and I mean, these are not houses that you do long term, but when you're down to nothing and you're sleeping outside, and it is cold as fuck in North Carolina, to North Carolinians at least, like, I have an idea what North Carolina is in the winter, even though I've never been there in the winter, and that is based on the fact that I raise carnivorous plants, not here obviously, but I mean, you guys saw a little bit of it from when I lived in my last place. And I brought them over from time to time because that was actually bigger and had more sunlight access. But yeah, I raise carnivorous plants. One of them, of course, being the Venus flytrap, which is native to North Carolina. And the way it's described when they go into dormancy is to simulate for yourself a North Carolina winter. Which means about 25 to 30 degrees at the coldest. So, for North Carolinians who are used to 80, 90, 100 degrees and moderate humidity, it's cold as fuck for them right now. And if they have nothing because of the hurricane, I mean, this will at least get them in, get them warm, and give them a place to cook, you know, and I like this. Now, there has been talk that they have been stopped from working because of regulations and everything else like that. I was not able to find confirmation of that, so I'm going to go on the assumption right now that they're not being blocked from making these tiny homes. If somebody can find confirmation of that, I would be appreciative. Then it would turn into something that I hate, because government intervention into actually helping people out. But the fact that they're coming down from Pennsylvania and building these homes the way that they do, like raise a barn on Monday, soon I'll raise another, you know, that kind of Amish ingenuity and workmanship. And I mean, if the Amish are building these, they're going to last. So this is definitely a thing that I like. On my side, Wisconsin Republicans pushing to make voter ID a constitutional requirement, which is great because currently our Wisconsin Supreme Court is trying to deem voter ID unconstitutional. And if it's literally in the Constitution of our state, then they can't do that. Oh, I guess there's no words to this one, so let's just listen.
Who control the Wisconsin legislature are moving quickly to place a measure on the April ballot that would put the state's already strict voter ID requirement into the state constitution. The move would make it more difficult for Democrats to soften the law of overturn of the requirement of in court. The amendment is the first proposal being considered by the legislature this year. The voter ID law has been challenged multiple times since it was enacted.
So yes, I'd like to see that happen in a way that it can't be blocked. I'm pro voter ID, but again, most people who follow me on X know that I'm not pro national voter ID because it is literally unconstitutional. That would require a federal constitutional amendment if you wanted to make it national, and it would be something that I'd be against myself because I like the fact that all of our elections are broken up across all 50 of our states. Makes it harder to cheat. Because then you have to go back and rig all 50 of the elections. Or at least enough of them to get the results that you want out of it. Other things that I like. From Disclose.tv, gay and transgender liberals in the U.S. are arming themselves over baseless fears of being placed in concentration camps under Trump. Per the New York Post, I think the baseless was unnecessary in this, but Disclose.tv is biased to the right. New York Post is not. But Disclose.tv definitely 100% is. Now, I like this. I like the fact that they're arming up because, especially if it's because they think the government's going to come back out and put them in prison. Because it's literally what the Second Amendment is for. We enshrine this in the Constitution because the government that we broke away from would imprison us on next to nothing, or its subjects in Britain over next to nothing. So we wanted a way to at least be able to stand up and die on our feet, if not win outright, when the government came for us. So, hey, they figured out the meaning of the Second Amendment. Maybe we'll get fewer stupid arguments about this over the next 4 years. They won't go entirely away, but maybe we'll get fewer stupid arguments over this. And that's what I put down in the comments too. It's almost like they understand what the Second Amendment is for. Finally. I don't think they're going to get put in camps, but that's literally what the Second Amendment is there to defend against. Now, full disclosure, I have not watched this video. I don't know what they're going to say, but a lot of people are laughing about it. Anderson Cooper is in shambles. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary. They were too busy holding a body upright. Let's listen to Anderson Cooper at his New Year's Eve extravaganza in New York.
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright. Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's... Oh, God. Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No!
All right, so the advertising was a little bit misleading because Anderson Cooper wasn't in shambles, but yes, those are actually very good criticisms of the Democrat Party for 2024. Let's see, is this the last thing that I had on things I like? Yes, it is. So, I like the fact that the Capitol got struck by lightning, but I hate the reaction to it because, well, people are thinking that this is a sign from God that Trump has a mandate because he's ordained by God. Because, of course, they do. U.S. Capitol struck by lightning on New Year's Eve. From Newsweek, U.S. Capitol struck by lightning on New Year's Eve, seen as God's message by MAGA. Why? Because of course it was. From James Bickerton. Trump supporters on social media speculated over whether the divine message was being sent after lightning strikes reportedly hit the U.S. Capitol building and Washington Monument in D.C. and the One World Trade Center and Empire State Building in New York City on New Year's Eve. Footage and images shared online purportedly showed all four buildings being struck as revelers gathered across the U.S. to see in the new year, thousands gathering in New York Times Square for the iconic ball drop despite heavy rain being in the forecast. The speculation takes place against the backdrop of a febrile political mood in the U.S., with Trump due to be inaugurated for the second time January 20th in D.C. During the election campaign, Trump promised radical change if he returned to the White House, including mass deportation of illegal immigrants, allowing companies to drill for fossil fuels, and an end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. So, yeah, they think that this is some sort of mandate. It's not. It might just be God is pissed at the government. Do residents of D.C. vote in national elections? Yes. They do have a delegate, a voting delegate, in the House for electoral college purposes. So yes, they do. They do not get a vote in legislation. Their delegate doesn't get a vote for that. The delegate can voice opinion on legislation and caucus, but does not get an official vote in Congress. And they have no senators. Palm walked 3 miles a day while she was ignoring the stream. Alright, let's do a few things that I hate. Number 1. The Calvin Coolidge Project says Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt announced a new program requiring students to do one of the following to graduate. Hold up. No, you can't require military service or for people to spend exorbitant amounts of money on college. You can't do that as governor. That is beyond your mandate. 1, if a student is not accepted into a college or trade school or can't afford the cost, they'll be required to join the Army, which is funny because it was pointed out in my Discord that somebody who's can't make it into trade school probably can't pass the Armed Forces exam. What did he say that it was? Let me see if I can find it again. It might be in articles. Not that one, not that one, not that one. Yeah, that one came back from a while ago. I think that was pre-New Year's. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I'm sure that someone who can't get into trade school can't pass the ASVAB, which I don't know what that is, but I'm sure that's true. Well, if you're going to go and advertise, sharing stream, and anything else like this here, you can take a little bit of a timeout. You take 5 minutes and think about what you just said. You can come back in 5 minutes and try again. I have a feeling that you won't. Another one bites the dust. Number 2 is be accepted into college, and number 3 is be accepted into a trade school. And the first thing I put on that is, well, that's unconstitutional. Deepwater Puritan said this may be wise, but it's not something the state can or should enforce. Again, no. If you have completed the course of study required by the Oklahoma State Board. The government cannot require you to spend $100,000 on college in order to and hold your diploma hostage over it. Especially when so many jobs require a high school diploma. In spite of the fact that it's fucking worthless, but my conversations on the American education system aside. So no, you can't actually do that. They try to talk their way out of it. Governor's office pushes back on reporting of high school graduation requirement change idea from Beth Wallace and State Impact Oklahoma. Stitt's office is pushing back on comments that says were taken out of context from an Oklahoma City news station about changes to high school graduation requirements. I want every kid ready for a career, Stitt said, and so I'm thinking about even making it a requirement to graduate from Oklahoma high schools. You either got to be accepted to college or have to be accepted to a career tech or have to be going into the Army, or you have to have some kind of plan post-graduation to go get a job. Again, it's a good idea, but you can't enforce that. That's against the law. So, no. We're not going to do that. That's out. Furthermore, and things that people would think that I would like, but I actually hate. University of Iowa announces plans to close Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies Department. From Jeffrey Clark. The University of Iowa announced it will close its Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies Department as public universities in the state continue to respond to changing DEI landscape. Under the proposed plan, the college would close the departments of American Studies and Gender, Women's, Sexuality Studies, as well as the current majors in American Studies and Social Justice, which have fewer than 60 students combined, and create a new major in Social Cultural Analysis, the University of Iowa announced in a press release on December 17th. So it's still going to be there. And it's still going to be offered as a major, which is even worse. The decision comes after Iowa's Board of State Regents approved 10 recommendations to scale back diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives at the Hawkeye State. We're excited to reposition these programs for the future, Dean of University of Iowa's College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Sarah Sanders said. The creation of a School of Social and Cultural Analysis would allow us to build on our considerable legacy in areas that are essential to our mission while creating more sustainable structures and room for innovative new curricula. Here's the problem I have with this in eliminating these departments is that you eliminate any ability for people to go back and study these things, especially on a cultural stance further. Now, I agree with making this not something you can get a major for. Making this just into gen eds or things like that. Because, no, there is no use for a liberal arts major like gender studies in the real world. It's a filler course to get more people in through the college. That was a discussion we had in the Discord over this as we went on why they even have these programs as majors, and I pointed out the fact that the university gets the exact same amount of money for a pre-law as they do for a gender studies major. So it's a matter of getting more asses into seats. And getting more asses into seats to stay there for the entire 4 years. That's the reason they're doing it. It's financial in nature. Give me just a moment. The Instagram is getting the full brunt of that, by the way, because I can't mute the computer and the Instagram at the same time. But yes, for major programs, the Board of Regents should absolutely have the right to restrict them into things that people would be able to pay their student loans back from, to be able to get a career out of. Yes, even if they pay for cash for this. If they're going to go through the school to actually get something that makes the school look reputable on paper. And again, I have no problem with cultural studies programs, gender studies, race studies, things like that. I think they make good fillers, and there are people that are legitimately interested in the kind of program. And yes, the university can make money off of that kind of thing. But again, it's not as a major program. And it looks like they are continuing to keep this as a major program. From CBS Austin, Bernie Sanders plans to introduce legislation based on Trump's credit card rates promise. Both of these fuckers are out of their minds, by the way. Bernie Sanders said Tuesday he will introduce legislation to limit credit card interest rates to 10%, noting President-elect Trump made a similar promise on the campaign trail, and I accosted him for that then. Again, I'm not being hypocritical by saying this, even though I've said I wish that I had a credit card under that amount, and the fact that because of the prime rate, the credit card offers I'm getting with good credit now have a higher interest rate than the one that I got when I had bad credit. And I think that's fucking ridiculous. On the campaign trail, Donald Trump stood up and said he would cap credit card interest rates at 10%, and you know what? That's a good idea, Sanders wrote. I'm going to introduce legislation to do exactly that. Now, would this stimulate the economy? Actually, probably, as people went out and decided what they made their purchase on, knowing that they could get it at under 10% interest. And that, of course, again, is assuming that everybody who had a credit card or was able to get a new credit card was able to keep their credit card under the same situation. The issue, of course, is the fact that knowing that there are going to be people at risk. Now, the people with 700 plus credit scores, they're going to keep their credit cards no problem. That's not going to be an issue for them. They're going to keep every single one of them. But a guy with a 650 is probably not going to get any more credit card offers, and the ones that he already has might stay active just because of the credit history he has, but he's never going to get an offer for another one. Anybody with a sub 600 credit score, like I had when I started rebuilding my credit, and I got my first credit card, which I'm not going to name the company for, even though they've done very good by me. They're not paying me to shout them out, so they're not getting shouted out on this. Now, if they were paying me to advocate for them, I absolutely would. But I know the kind of money you're getting off the interest from me, so if you want me to say your name on air, credit card company that helped me out and rebuild my credit, you're going to have to fucking pay me. But regardless on that, when you get to that point, they're not going to offer a credit card to somebody with a 530 credit score like they did in my case. Because there's too much risk to getting that back. Credit cards will be something for the rich and the rich alone at that point, if you cap credit card interest rates at 10%. And that's just the long and short of it. Alright, a couple other things that I hate. I'm going to skip these last two, but I'm going to get through those ones here. Excuse me. Eric Doherty tweets out a poll, or X's out rather a poll, saying a majority of Republicans, 53%, support a constitutional amendment, allowing Trump to run for a third term as president, just 28% opposed. With Gunther Eagleman saying, Trump 2028, are you in? I'm going to answer that with 3 words. Absolutely fucking not. I'm going to be glad when Trump is termed out. He was 100% better than the alternative. I will give Eagleman and Doherty that. And the people of the poll. I'll give them that. We would be in much, much worse position if we were staring down the barrel of a Harris presidency. But the term limits are put there for a reason. And a big part of the reason that they did that is because it also prevents people from holding office into a kingly position for 12, 16, 20, maybe 30 years if you get a president young enough, like Obama was at the start of his first term. Becoming basically the Emperor of the United States on promising free shit. That miserable fucking cripple in the 40s got us the amendment in the first place, so that's the kind of people we're afraid of. So no. Even if he does really, really well this time through, which I'm not completely convinced that he's going to, no. Let's not do this a third time. Fuck that noise. Going back to the North Carolina thing, Buncombe County, North Carolina has officially confirmed this afternoon it will not be waiving or reducing property taxes for homes that no longer exist due to Hurricane Helene. Property taxes are due at midnight tonight. Thanks for playing. Let's watch the video. I'm going to weigh in on this. And it won't be entirely taxation as theft.
As a reminder, today is the last day to pay your property tax bill before it becomes delinquent. Please note that North Carolina law does not permit property tax waivers or exceptions for natural disasters, including Hurricane Helene. For assistance, contact the tax department at 828-250-4910, or you can visit them in person at 94 Cox Avenue in downtown Asheville. Parking is available across the street for free. If you have property damage, please make sure you have reported it via the reporting form on our website at buncombecounty.org. For frequently asked questions about the tax bills and hurricane-related tax information, you can visit buncombecounty.org/tax. That website, again, is buncombecounty.org/tax. As a reminder, today...
Okay, first off, taxation is theft. Let's get that out there to begin with. Now, second off, if we are assuming that the taxation is legal and not actually theft as I have deemed it, the biggest problem that I have with this, I would not agree with eliminating the property tax altogether. I would find a way to file extensions for people because they are literally rebuilding right now. And a lot of them don't have any cash to do the tax right now because they're in the middle of rebuilding their homes. And a lot of them just lost everything. So extensions, I think, are in order. And furthermore, given the fact that since September, the improvements on these properties are either not usable or gone entirely, I would say that property is assessed at a much, much lower rate. And yes, you should be offered a lower rate for this while you're rebuilding, and the fact that your property is no longer improved in many cases. And if it is improved in some of the cases, it's improved to a point that it's not usable. The roof and half your second story is gone. So you should be paying the exact same rate as you were when you could put a family of 4 in that fucking house. That doesn't make any sense. Does that make any sense to you? Come on, people. This stupidity right here. Patriot Takes. I'm not going to play the video, but I'll read their X on this one. Lauren Boebert says, Jesus went to hell in our place. That they're trying to use this to mock her and trying to turn Christians against her. And he didn't stay there. I believe he showed up and said, hey, y'all, I'm the King of Glory has arrived. He took back the keys of death, hell, and the grave. All of that authority was relinquished. That was relinquished to Satan. And they're mocking her, trying to turn Christians against her for making this statement. Except, that's literally what Christians believe. Maybe not the, hey y'all, the King of Glory has arrived. That might be a paraphrase. But that's actually what we believe. Anybody who's been to church as an adult more than 3 times knows these words. I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. Here's the important part. He descended into hell, and on the 3rd day he rose again from the dead. To complete the creed, of course, before I comment on this, on the 3rd day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From there he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Christian Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. It's literally right there. That's literally what we believe, is that he went to hell and defeated death and the devil. That's not a gotcha, you dumb fuck. Alright, back to what I talked about in the beginning. This will be the last thing that I hate on these 2 slides here. So, DC Drano has become completely insufferable over the past couple days. Now, DC Drano was a person who was against the Bushites, against the Lindsey Grahams, and yes, against the Mike Johnsons. He was openly against the nomination of Mike Johnson as Speaker, and he was calling for the ouster of Mike Johnson on several occasions over the last year. But when Big Don said, no, we have to go back and elect Mike Johnson, then he suddenly changed his tune, saying that we need to do everything we can to support Mike Johnson. Now, a lot of people are saying that he just sucked a bunch of big orange dick off of this, and we'll look at the X that came through here before we go back and look at my response to this one. But I do think that there's something else to this. So, the original X that got me thinking about this and put this on the things that I hate says, everyone standing in the way of the Trump agenda will be steamrolled. Everyone. We the people are sick of corrupt politicians who stood by and watched while our country was almost destroyed. Get on board with a MAGA agenda or get run over. And I respond to that with 2 words initially before we look at my actual quote X on this one of fuck yourself. And he's doing this, by the way, by going strongly against one of the most America First members of Congress, Libertarian Thomas Massie, who caucuses as a Republican. And that's why I said at the beginning in the show tonight that this is not going to be a MAGA or Trump superfan account. We're not doing that. And I said that when I made the announcement that I voted for Trump, in spite of the fact that I was not planning to do so. This is not going to be a Trump superfan account from here on out. When he does good, I'll praise him. When he does wrong, and he will do wrong, then I will call him out. Especially to people like this asshole. My response to this was, so as long as the agenda is improving the lives of Americans, I have no issue with this. But unlike Drainage, which was my nickname for DC Drano, this will not be a Trump stan account. I made that promise when I voted for him. If he exceeds his constitutional limits, uses the DOJ on enemies, or overspends, we're done. One of my followers says he better not act like the dumbass that he did in the last 2 years of his presidency. He better stay the fuck away from our guns, and for fuck's sakes, can we stop sending all the money overseas? And I pointed this out. There's a big issue that I have with Drano. It's probably what hands the DNC in 2026 and 2028. It's that the full conform or die attitude spits in the face of libertarians, union Dems, and everymen who bit their tongue and voted for Trump and were instrumental to his win. And I was one of those people, too, by the way. I did not want to vote for Trump, but I did so because of how bad I perceived the alternative. And this get on board with the entire agenda, or we're just going to steamroll over you, that's a slap in the face to a lot of people who were instrumental to the win. But now DC Drano is trying to defend the fact that he's getting paid as well. Okay, I'll say what most won't. Podcasters, influencers, and activists should be encouraged to make money posting on the internet. Stop letting closeted Marxists try to shame you into vows of poverty. That's not what people are criticizing you for, by the way, by any stretch of the imagination. Our entire legacy media ecosystem is hijacked by globalist multi-billion-dollar corporations, and we are the only truth tellers left. Many of us have been banned, censored, and demonetized. I personally left my corporate law job making hundreds of thousands of dollars to post in support of the MAGA movement and didn't make any money for years. That's probably actually true. Many other influencers left their jobs to fight for the MAGA movement as well. Every major institution is trying to silence and destroy us, so we have to fend for ourselves. Advertisements, X revenue, and other free market systems are the only things keeping us afloat. If independent media disappears, so does the Trump movement. We're fighting to make America great again, and that includes capitalism, free speech, and success. That's all a really, really pretty speech. The problem is that's not where he's getting his money from. And I know why they did it. I know what they're trying to do with the Trump campaign and the campaigns of several other politicians who are going to be following in the wake of Trump. I know what they're trying to do. They're just not doing it very well. Which is stupid because they actually have the advantage of actually being able to put these people up as grassroots. What they're trying to do is they're trying to set up their own army of propagandists to counter the people like Victor Shi and Harry Sisson and JoJo from Joyce and Jersey Crack Dad and people like that. But the problem is that these accounts existed beforehand, and we know what they actually believe, and many of them, like Drano, are going back on things that they stated that they believed when they weren't getting paid, and they're getting paid directly by the Trump campaign to do so. He's not just getting his money from X revenue, advertisements, and other free market systems. That's a lie. He's getting paid by 2 Florida super PACs and probably the Trump influencer PAC as well. That one I cannot confirm, but likely that's where he's getting a large portion of his money from. And the internet is forever. We know what you were saying beforehand, especially with you being in such support of Mike Johnson right now, because you were one of the loudest voices against Johnson before November, before Trump endorsed Johnson. A lot of the MAGA people rose to their ranks organically, without cash infusions from things like super PACs. That's something the Democrats can't do. Because if people want to listen to the same opinions they're going to get on MSDNC, then they'll just tune in to watch Rachel Maddow do it, instead of seeing some hyperactive 20-year-old kid parrot the exact same thing Rachel Maddow said on TV not that long ago. So this is a really stupid move by the Trump administration and the PAC that's paying it to try to put people like this, who were openly questioning of the Trump agenda when it was excessive spending or being controlled by rhinocons like Mike Johnson, like Lindsey Graham, etc. And I think it's going to turn around and backfire on them. Especially, like I said, the fact that they're using people who had established accounts before this, where we know what it was that they were saying 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years ago. So that's where they're at with this. And yes, as I said before, if we go back into overspending, or we start using the DOJ to go after political enemies, or go start doing wars, or expanding constitution, I'm out. I will be one of the loudest voices against Trump. I'll be standing with fucking progressives on this one. I don't care. I'll deal with their politicians later. So that's where I'm at on this one. We are done. We're out of here. Holy crap, I went for almost 3 hours. I didn't even realize that. Holy shit. I guess when you get on a good rant, it just stays with that. So, yeah, we're done. We're out of here. And then I have to go down to the Quick Trip and get some more milk. Probably some energy drinks too. Which that one I should have done on my way home because I didn't realize I didn't have any. But while I'm doing that, I'll be setting up the audio platform. So you guys can listen to that on Spotify tomorrow. The YouTube video will be up before I go stream tomorrow night. Change out the end card scene as we go. Let's change out the music. A little bit of music. You know, I was actually hopeful when I set everything up at the top of the show that when I saw how short the main news segment was, that we weren't going to go for 3 hours. But here we are. 2 hours, 51 minutes, and 6 seconds on the official recording count, with a little bit more on the live count because, well, I don't set the record until after the live has been going and I advertise everything. But with that, we are out of here. Thanks everybody so much who came by and hung out in the live chat. You guys are the kings. The more you chat in the live chat, the better we do on the algorithm. So thank you always. I will always have a special place to thank the people who came by and chatted in the live chat while we are live. For those of you who are listening on the replays on YouTube, on Spotify, or the other audio platforms, or on the replay over on Rumble, you guys are also the king too, because the more views we get again, the more they send us back out to the front of the line for each of our subsequent videos. So definitely looking forward to that. So thank you all for that. Those likes do help out every once in a while. I don't want to be one of those cringe YouTubers who every 10 seconds on my video says like, subscribe, comment. But if you ever want to help out, do that as well. And we'll be back here next week. Although the schedule after that is going to be a little bit up in the air based on some things that are happening. And some utilities that are happening along with that as well. Those of you who are in the inner circle know. Those of you who are not in the inner circle don't know. But it'll be up in the air. But thanks so much for watching. We will keep up with the news as much as we can over the next couple weeks. Be back to probably regular streaming into February in a new setup. Details on that to come. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.